City Star, John, this is not over. It isn't over?
Oh, no. I don't believe so. There will always be an issue so long as institutions of science and public education hold to an irrefutable preconception about origins. So long as that preconception is in place at the institutional level, there's going to be controversy. And the preconception is that all the natural history, all natural phenomena can be explained adequately with just material causation. There can be no intelligent cause. And so in the video, in the NOVA special, Ken Miller acknowledged that. The problem was the special itself, nor the trial, really deal with this preconception in any comprehensive way. And the problem with the preconception is that evolution, origin science, deals with an ultimate question. Where do we come from? And when you are allowed only to explain with material cause, then you answer that question in advance. You answer it before it's even asked. An example of the problem is if you can imagine sending a coroner to the scene of a death, and you ask the coroner to come back and explain the cause of the death. The coroner goes to the scene. He sees a body face down in the front yard, and there are 3 knives in his back. The coroner comes back, and you say, "What's the cause of death?" "Well, it was an accident." "Well, how can you explain these knives in this guy's back? That looks like an intelligent cause." He said, "Well, I'm not permitted to explain these events with anything but natural or accidental causes, and I know it's not a natural cause, so it's an accident." That is the problem is that institutions of science use that preconception, and that makes in origin science. So when the investigator goes to the scene, he is not asked what caused the death. He's asked what caused life, and he's only permitted to give one answer: material cause.
Eric.
Well, I was just wondering, I mean, just with that analogy there that you use, is it a possible question then that a creator caused this death?
Well, I think if you look at the data, now the reason why we infer intelligence with knives in the back is that shows a purposeful action. When we look at DNA, we see messages. It's like messages on the walls at Luxor. And they're genetic symbols. There's systems that copy those messages, that then edit them and then translate those messages into operational programs. And so what we see when we look into, we see more than knives. We see messages. So we see all the indicia of an intelligent cause. Francis A. Ayala, just in a paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, said that the challenge to evolutionary biology, the present challenge, is to explain how these incredibly apparently designed systems can be explained without a sentient designer.
And so, Steve, why are we handicapping teachers then to explore things in a more broader way, as John Calvert talks about it?
Well, there's not, and John knows that there's a lot that he just said that I disagree with, because we've had this conversation before. Science doesn't proceed on preconceived notions. In the trial, supernatural causation isn't allowed because we don't have the tools in science to explore purpose or those kinds of things. Science wasn't on trial, so these things weren't on trial there. It was a point of the plaintiffs to prove that they were, in fact, a science with intelligent design, and that's something they failed to do. And the statement, I believe it was DeRossi in the film, said that, you know, they had some intuitions and ideas and metaphors, some of which John just used, to explain intelligent design and purpose. But science doesn't explore purpose in a sense outside of the mechanical universe, and that's a limitation of science. Now, the other point that I think is important to bring it back to education is that there is no such thing as origin science. I can't walk around the university campus and find a department of origin science. People might look to explain through science in a scientific way the origin of life, and that may be a particular research agenda of a researcher. But that was not included in the Kansas Science Education Standards, and nor has anybody in the committee ever been in favor of that, because origin science is still speculative as a research area. There's some really interesting ideas, testable hypotheses about origins, but there is not a good explanation that we would share with kids at a fundamental level. Okay. Evolution is not origin science.
I want to get into the practical details of how this actually works in a school situation just a second, but John, you wanted to respond to that?
Yeah, science does explore purpose. I mean, that's what biochemistry is all about. We're trying to understand the function of biosystems. We're trying to understand why, how they operate. And so we're actually using design as a working hypothesis to understand the system. So science does explore purpose. Now, in terms of what science does not explore is the purpose of life itself. That is a question that I think is reserved for theology. But the question of whether the system may be designed is a perfectly scientific question. It's explained by Ayala, who says our challenge is to figure out how this system could be put together to show this apparent design when it's not really designed.
Okay, Eric, in a classroom setting, bound to be parents, students who are going to bring up concerns about evolution. How is that handled? Do you get parents?
Well, I think this is an interesting question, because it's something that you had emailed me about, and I think over the 16 years of teaching, I was talking to my students today, I don't think I can count on my hand, one hand, the number of times that any parent in my school district has ever talked to me about the teaching of evolution in the classroom. I cannot specifically remember any specific case. I know it's happened a few times, but in none of those cases was it in any of those cases was it in a confrontational mode at all. It was
how about then a student? Has a student said to you, well, why isn't there something divine about how we are created?
Well, definitely. I think more recently, probably because of the general controversy in terms of knowledge of controversy, there are students that come to the classroom with conceptions of, like, let's say, microevolution versus macroevolution, and when I talk about natural selection and explain how species may change through time, they're like, aren't you just talking about macroevolution? What about speciation? So students bring those topics to bear.
So how do you handle that?
Well, in terms of that concept, I kind of break evolution up into two major units in my freshman biology course. And we cover natural selection during the first unit, which is the microevolution kind of idea that species can change over time. And I give them a very good grounding in that, and I think I also expose them to the fact that Darwin was not out to take down the church, that he was just trying to understand the universe around him in some way. So I try to personalize his life in some way. And then we move on into macroevolution in the second unit, where we use examples of the Encina salamander complex in California and how it appears that speciation is occurring before us. We talk about the Hawaiian Drosophila fruit flies and the islands in Hawaii, and look at chromosomal inversions and things like that too.
In the independent school district, Scott, how often would you hear from a parent? Do you hear from parents or students?
I'd have to mimic exactly what you said. In the last 9 years that I've taught, I really have never encountered a parent
not once
in an argumentative tone ever approach me to discuss evolution whatsoever.
How about a student who says, aren't there other reasons to explain what is happening here?
That happens about every year.
And how do you handle that?
Normally, at a middle school level, my students look at my topic, science, as very concrete. And they look at it as, these are the answers, these are the facts. And what I attempt to do, since they are very rapidly going to be approaching into the high school level, is to show them that science is a way of thinking. It's not just a collection of facts. And that even theories can be modified, changed, small, radically, over large periods of time, short periods of time, depending on the evidence that it supports. And science doesn't have all the answers, but that's the nature of science.
Greg, how about in your experience?
Okay, I've had just